Everybody, welcome back to my channel. I am Adorkable Rachel, and it's time for another episode of Rachel Reviews, so let's just hop into it. Mary Poppins Returns is of course a sequel to the original 1964 Julie Andrews movie, and believe it or not, this is actually the release of the longest gap ever between a movie and an official sequel. 54 years. What? Oh my god! Mary Poppins Returns takes place a few decades later with the Banks children all grown up, and Michael has 3 kids of his own, having recently lost his wife to the fatal dead Disney mother disease. But when something happens, it starts to turn things a little bleak for the family. As you'd expect, Mary Poppins, played this time by Emily Blunt, flies down from the clouds to take over as the nanny once again, and of course a lot of magical and whimsical adventures ensue. And I can't really say how much of any of this material is based on stuff from P.L. Travers' original books, but then again, the original movie also took a lot of liberties, but it still turned out great, so that really doesn't matter here. Emily Blunt as Mary Poppins could not be more perfect casting. In the original film, Julie Andrews' Mary Poppins was a strict nanny, but she also had a very likable and whimsical quality about her. She was also very mysterious. She would convince certain characters that her ideas were in fact theirs, and also frequently denies anything magical that previously happened, yet obviously enjoying every minute of it. Emily Blunt's performance was exactly that. She's not an exact replica of Julie Andrews, but with good reason. I wouldn't want to compare the two, or even expect Emily Blunt to recreate the character as Julie Andrews did. I really appreciate that Emily Blunt made this character her own and was still able to embody that strict but delightful and loving quality. And not much of a surprise, the rest of the cast was really good too. The adults as the Banks children were good, the kids themselves were good. Meryl Streep as Mary Poppins' over-the-top cousin was basically Meryl Streep, but she was still a lot of fun. Also, they got Colin Firth in this movie, just basically playing Colin Firth, and he was this really forced villain character that was pretty forgettable, so eh. But when Dick Van Dyke showed up in the movie as Mr. Dawes Jr. in a short little cameo, the audience I was with applauded. And he made so much more of an impact than a lot of these other side characters. He was singing and dancing, and I was just like, dang, I hope I'm this energetic when I'm in my 90s. And I know that we've seen the overworked dad who ignores his kids motif so many times in other movies, and they do that here. In fact, they actually do lift a lot from the Christopher Robin movie. But to be fair, this movie isn't really about an overworked dad. In fact, things are fine with this family when the movie starts out, but then something happens to Michael that causes him to neglect his kids, and that's when Mary Poppins comes in. And for the most part, I felt a lot of sympathy for this guy, and Ben Whishaw sells it really well, and the character even sings this really emotional song about how much he misses his wife in the very beginning of the movie. I had the feels. I did. I'm just saying, even though in a lot of ways that angle's really cliche, I just appreciate that I was able to get a little bit more invested in it. And then of course we have Lin-Manuel Miranda as Jack the Lamplighter. Not Bert the Chimney Sweep, Jack the Lamplighter. But don't blink or you might confuse the two. And don't get me wrong, I actually really do like Lin-Manuel Miranda in this movie. He's very lively and charming, and of course he's an excellent singer, but I have to wonder, why didn't they just create another character that was more distinct? Because besides not being a chimney sweep, this is basically the exact same character, right down to a very questionable accent. In the words of my friend Greg Alba, this is like the exact definition of the same but different. Okay, let's put a pin in that. We'll come back to that later. Also, can I just say real quick that I really greatly appreciate that this movie, which is a musical, actually has people that can sing in it. One of my biggest pet peeves is when there's a musical movie that has actors that clearly are not singers and they're just there for the star power. Looking at you, Mamma Mia.
Where are those happy days?
But thankfully that was not the case here, and this actually felt like a legit musical. The Sherman Brothers, of course, didn't actually write the music in this movie, but one thing that does make me happy is that Richard Sherman was a musical supervisor. Now before I get too critical, I do want to say that I do like a lot of the songs in this movie. They're really nice and they're well written, and they've also got a very charming energy depending on the mood, but I gotta be honest, I don't think any of them are masterpieces. And again, I hate to compare, but they just really didn't seem to be on par with any of the songs from the first film. Except maybe maybe the first one that Mary Poppins sings, maybe. But there's no spoonful of sugar equivalent, there's no supercalifragilisticexpialidocious equivalent, there's no feed the birds equivalent. Not saying we need to talk about those exact subjects again, but the subjects in these songs are just nowhere near as significant or memorable. I realized when I walked out of the movie that I wasn't humming any of the songs walking out of there, not even the very last song that was very lively and fun. And I really can't remember any of the lyrics from any of the songs. Again, that's not to say that these songs weren't good. I mean, I was smiling during the high energy numbers and I got a little emotional during some of the songs, but I don't foresee really any of these songs becoming, you know, classics. But visually speaking, that's where the musical numbers really shine. Not the lyrics or the melodies, but the animation and the choreography and sets and the colors. Those were unbelievably eye-popping. I especially love the animation sequence because there's just something about the way that the animals are animated. They look like flat drawings, but they still look like they belong in the same environment as the humans. Also, just on a personal note, I love the outfits that the characters wear in that sequence. They actually look like paintings that blend so well into the environment. And I don't really want to talk about plot holes because this is the Mary Poppins universe after all. There's supposed to be wonder and magic and you're really not supposed to question a lot of this stuff. But there is just one thing that I want to mention that I noticed when the movie ended that didn't really exactly get a proper wrap up, and I just kind of want to brag real quick about how I noticed this and I don't think a lot of other people did. At one point in the movie, the characters take something to another character to get that item fixed, and they say that they're gonna come back and get it, but then I realized after the movie was over, they never went back and got it. Wait, what? What happened? What happened to continuity, guys? We spent a good chunk of the movie on that thing and how important that thing is, and you're not even gonna go back for it? I mean, all you had to do was show it on the shelf again later. That would have been fine, but I think the filmmakers forgot to go back to this. Yeah, thanks a lot for ignoring that important plot point, guys. Whatever, I know it's probably not that big of a deal, but I just noticed that and I'm just a little baffled that they never went back for it. You know, I'm just saying. Anyway, I actually really did have a lot of fun watching this movie. I mean, I love the original one so much, and clearly there was a lot of love behind the scenes for that movie too when they were producing this. However, actually, what I think though stopped me from loving it so much is that I think it kind of relied a little too much on the audience being familiar with the original movie. And I get that it's a sequel, it's expected that you're gonna see the first movie first, but also that's kind of the problem. Let me explain. Remember earlier when I said let's put a pin in that whole Jack being the exact same character as Bert? Well, that's not the only time something like that happens in this movie. For example, rather than having the mother fight for votes for women as a suffragette, now we have Jane fighting for workers' rights as a labor organizer. Rather than go into an animated land inside a drawing, this time they go into an animated land inside of a china pot. Rather than visit Mary Poppins' eccentric uncle, this time we visit her eccentric cousin. And rather than have a chimney sweep dance number, this time we have a lamplighter dance number. You starting to see a pattern yet? And while all those things in the second movie are really well done and inventive, it's hard to not notice that they're basically just copying beats from the first film, and they're just not really doing anything that original. It just feels like they took all these little elements from the first movie and then packaged them in a way that they're different enough so it's familiar, but it's also not exactly the same thing. Again, the definition of the same but different. Obviously, they want the audience to grab onto that familiarity. I get it, but also by playing it safe and grabbing onto too much familiarity, it just felt like they weren't really trying anything all that new, and that's disappointing. Again, a lot of the stuff was still really fun and creative, it just felt like way too much of the same. But I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. If you actually go look at the Wikipedia page for this movie, it's already been nominated for several awards and it's not even out yet. So maybe that's just me. What do I know? The best way that I can describe this movie is charming. It's a charming movie. The acting and singing is great, the casting is near perfect, the production design, cinematography, costumes, and animation, they're all really well done. And while the songs are good, good and serve their emotional purpose. I still don't know that I'd call any of them classics, but a lot of them are a lot of fun to watch. And I will say this, it's really nice to see a live-action Disney sequel that actually felt warranted.
They seem so hard to find.
Some of the sequel elements feel a little forced, but it actually in a lot of ways also does make a lot of sense. And also, so many sequences in this movie do bring you back to the wonder and magic of being a child again. If Disney is going to make more live-action movies, whether it be sequels or reboots, this is the kind of quality that I would want it to be on par with. And I also think that seeing an original Disney musical movie in this day and age is incredibly unique. The film does remind me of a lot of the musical movies that Disney was pushing out during the Mary Poppins era, and I would love it if they did more stuff like this, and not just sequels or reboots, but actually do some original stories. That would be fantastic. If you absolutely adored the first movie, then it's very likely that you will like this. And maybe you'll enjoy the familiarity of it. Maybe the similarities won't bother you, or maybe they will. I can't say. It really just kind of depends on how picky you are. But for me, this film serves more as a loving reminder of what it can be like to see the world through the eyes of a child again. And it feels more in the spirit of Walt Disney, who wanted to create stories for the child in all of us. And I can't deny that so many moments in this film did grab that part of me. Is it worth seeing in theaters? Yes, absolutely. I highly recommend it. Just don't be surprised if you see a lot of stuff that feels insanely similar to the first movie. And if you haven't seen the first movie yet, first of all, what are you doing with your life? I think that you will be a little bit lost on this one because, like I said, it does kind of rely on the familiarity of the first film. So if you're gonna go see it, I do recommend watching it. But also, if your kids haven't seen it yet, then this is a good opportunity to introduce them to it. So go ahead and watch it, and then go and see this one. I'm sure you'll have a good time. So those are my thoughts on Mary Poppins Returns, so now I want to know, what did you guys think of the movie? Also let me know, do you have any fond memories of the original film, and are there any other movies coming out soon that you want me to review? Well, go ahead and leave your comments below, be sure to like and share, and if you're new and like what you saw here, then don't forget to hit that subscribe button, and also be sure to hit the little bell button down there to get notified when new stuff comes out, because I make new videos every week! Bye, Adorkable buddies, I'll see you soon!